This is a download from BFM 89.9, the business station.
Good morning, this is Raise Your Game. I'm Freda Liu, and I know from experience that it can be easy to feel like transformation is hard to achieve, or some miracle of life like a caterpillar metamorphosing. There you go, I couldn't even say the word, into a butterfly. But it turns out that this whole process isn't as difficult or as clear-cut as the analogy usually suggests. Hetal Doshi, organisational psychologist, will be joining us for the first of 12 shows all about the butterfly effect of organisational transformation. Good to be speaking to you, Hetal. Happy New Year, never too late.
Thank you for having me, Freda, and Happy New Year to you too.
Okay, now why did you name the series The Butterfly Effect?
Well, a lot of organizations, in fact, almost every other organization is going through transformation these days. A majority of them are using the word very, very loosely. And whenever they make announcements about the transformation, most people don't understand it and they don't understand how difficult it's going to be. And so as psychologists, we very, very often, more often than not, we use the analogy of caterpillar to butterfly to visually understand the process, the expectations, and the pain that one would go through with regards to transformation. Because this isn't change. You're expecting something radically different. Otherwise, we would call it a change.
Okay.
Yeah. And so
what happens then, I guess, is that we have certain expectations. It's not aligned. These goals are not aligned.
I think they are not aligned. So goals are goals. They're just basically not aligned with regards to how people will achieve them when it's radically different. So between you and I, even if we have to lose 1 kilo, it's really hard.
Yes.
Much less begin to look like a completely different person. And that's what organizations are going through. So say, for example, telcos. There used to be telcos before, but now they call themselves digital service providers.
Right.
That's radically different. People who join the company, they're like flabbergasted.
Right.
I joined a telco. What is a digital service provider? So the organization is expecting this huge transformation. But as an individual, how do I visually understand what's going to happen to me and to the organization? And because we are visual creatures, majority of us, and we want to understand what this future could look like, we use this phenomena of butterfly effect to make it easy for people to understand, at the same time be realistic about the pain that they might go through. And the fact that caterpillars, they know they're going to become butterflies.
Okay.
But in organizations, we don't know what that's going to look like.
Right.
Kitten, cat, puppy, dog, caterpillar, butterfly. But this organization, no clue.
Right.
Yeah. So
and you were just saying, like with telcos, there used to be a telco, and now they're known as digital services or what have you.
Yeah.
And it's like that is so nice on the outside, but internally there's no change yet.
Yeah. Internally, there's absolutely no change, no understanding, no clue. As you said earlier, digital services and what have you not. That's exactly what they think about it when the announcement is made. Digital services, apa? What? So no clue whatsoever. So there are 3 major things that we talk about when we talk about butterfly effect that helps organizations to make sure that they take transformation very seriously and from a psychological perspective. So number 1, caterpillar, very clear, become butterfly. But in organizations, there's no visual description of what that's going to look like. There's just an announcement of what the name would be, but not a visual description of what it looks like. So it's very important not only to draw it out, but to co-create what this picture is going to look like. We did a study where the CEO just gave a description of what the company is going to look like, and we got people to draw what it was going to look like. And when they drew, he said that it looked nothing like what he had in mind.
Right.
Versus another group where the CEO spoke about what he's going to be doing and drew it out. And we got the people to also draw it out. And from there, they begin to understand that the CEO's picture and their picture is a little different. But they had a session to make sure that they created a clearer picture together. So it cannot just be an announcement. So the clarity of what it's going to look like needs to almost be spoken, but at the same time experienced. Like, what did you understand? And how, through your understanding, my understanding, we co-create it. So this process is not as simple as just making an announcement. It doesn't make any sense at all. So
interesting, right? I mean, you actually draw it out, and your picture and my picture is so different.
Absolutely.
And I guess, like, when you talk about the caterpillar turning into a butterfly, right? They also go through a state, right?
Yes.
The life cycle of a caterpillar to a butterfly.
Yeah.
And that's also what I guess employees have to go through.
Absolutely. In order for the organization to transform, every single human being there that is operationalizing it, making it happen, has to go through some kind of transformation. And so when you look at the caterpillar to the butterfly, so now we have this picture that's very clear. Organization wants to go into digital services, for example. Not so easy, right? Tomorrow when I come in, I'm still bound by old habits, by old hopes, old dreams, so on and so forth.
Old software.
Exactly.
Right.
Old software. And so what is interesting to note is that the caterpillar stage can last for maybe about 1 to 2 weeks. So it's kind of valuable for organizations to take maybe 1 or 2 weeks with all of their departments to kind of draw what it looks like, make sure that picture looks clear. So 1 to 2 weeks in that kind of a mode, not too long. Majority of organizations, unfortunately, go through that for 8-9 months.
Right.
They can do it in 2 weeks if they do it.
Okay.
But the problem is the cocoon stage. So when we did research about butterflies, I never did research about butterflies before.
Okay.
We're in the space of humans.
Right.
But it's very interesting because in the cocoon stage can last up to 2 years.
Okay.
Literally.
Wow.
Literally.
The butterfly.
Yes.
Okay, I didn't know that.
So
okay.
1 to 2 weeks, eating, munching, chewing, whatever not.
Right.
Doing the level best it can to absorb all the information it requires, all the nutrition, whatever not. And then it goes into a cocoon stage for about 2 years, which is why a lot of organizations, when they say we need to make change happen or transformation happen within XYZ, say, for example, even the current government, it won't happen. You have to go through a whole cocoon process. And that just for a butterfly, it takes 2 years, much less organizations. I've met organizations that have had a transformation idea and have been going through it for the past 10 years.
Wow.
10 years of transformation, constant transformation.
Right.
So in this cocoon stage, what is unique to know is that only about 5% will make it out alive.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they don't live very long anyway.
They don't live very long. So
in cocoon for 2 years. Okay, let's not make it too much of a human analogy.
Yeah,
but
guess how long they last for as butterflies?
Right.
Even if they come out, they last as butterflies for just about maybe 1 to 2 days, maximum 2 weeks, depending on what species.
Oh.
So really the whole process of transformation is to understand what darkness looks like. Isn't it painful, Freda? It's like a mom saying, I'm so excited now I have a baby. Finally conceived. My moment has arrived. I'm happy. Tomorrow, the worry starts about, can I make it to the next trimester? You go through that again. You hit the first trimester. And then the worry, do I make it through the birth? And then you celebrate the birth. And then you begin to worry about whether or not the child is going to get through the first few months, the bonding, so on and so forth. And then you spend the rest of your life worrying as well. So, very importantly to note, in the cocoon stage, what are the reasons why it dies? 95% of the time is twofold. One is externally, so the external condition can kill you. Like for a cocoon, it could be pesticides, could be rain, could be where you're placed. So if you're lower down, easier to be flushed down. Too high up, easy to flush down. You need to have some kind of a shelter. And then internally as well. That level of resilience, the level of ability, the amount of nutrition that you had before that to be able to push yourself to be strong from the inside. So some things you can't control, which may be the external environment, but internally you could be strong as well. So the idea about transformation from a psychological perspective is really about building resilience.
How did you get into this space of transformation as an organizational psychologist, and why this is a critical piece for psychologists to be present in?
So I started maybe about 15 years ago, 12 to 15 years ago. My first job, Freda, was to get people out of their jobs.
Okay.
And it was horrifying. It was horrifying, but at the same time, it was so exciting because no matter how people felt when they were first told that they were going to lose their jobs, so some of them would be fighters. They would resist the whole thing. Some of them would be avoiding it, pretending that it never happened, just saying that, no, the organization's going to come back, change their mind.
Right.
And then, you've got the third group who still, after a period of time, don't know what to do. So we got them fighters, flighters, and the freezers. But there was this very small group, like 5% of them, who would almost be like opportunists.
Right.
Kind of already predicted what life will be like.
They're like the butterfly, huh?
Yeah.
The 5% to survive.
And they almost come in as negotiators at that point in time to say like, okay, maybe can the organization do a little bit more, a little bit more, a little bit more? I'm kind of ready to go. So these people, what interested me the most was that after a year of following up with everybody was doing well. And in fact, a lot of them said that they kind of saw it coming and it's kind of natural that organizations go through that. And they actually said that this probably was one of the better things that ever happened to them in their lives.
Right.
So what this told me was 3 questions that came to my mind is, number one, you know how we always say like crisis is the mother of all opportunities, right? But when it happens, majority of us can't see that. So if this is a phenomena that, we should be able to see opportunities, blah, 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 why is it that we can't? And given the majority can't, like 95%, organizations need to design it psychologically so that people can see it almost straight away.
Right.
And normally you can see it when you start drawing and co-creating and talking about it more and more and more. And then you're like, okay, maybe there is an opportunity over here. The second thing that really, kind of pulled on my heartstrings the most was the people who suffer in this process. And you don't have to suffer that much. So people go through high levels of trauma, like say, for example, job loss is one of the top 5 types of trauma, most intense trauma that one could experience. But it's not really the job loss, it's that experience of betrayal that becomes the top 2 most extreme events that you could ever experience in your life.
Right.
The feeling that you got betrayed. So that suffering can be greatly reduced if you design from a psychological perspective that people will suffer. So how do you reduce that suffering? You don't need to. It's very costly for organizations actually when people suffer because it's their mental state that gets affected. Like 1 in 3 are right now currently going through really, really high levels of mental health related issues. And then you've got physical health related issues. And then you've got impact on family. So all that pain that you're going through, you pass that on to your family. And then that affects obviously the entire society. And then obviously you've got things like trust deficit, which is the biggest issue after that. And then the third thing is that struck me the most is, why is it that some people can kind of come out of it in 2 days, 1 day, 30 minutes, and others take 12 months, 2 years, 10 years? How do we design a lot of these experiences so that we can ensure transformation takes place for everybody in the shortest period of time to make that leap? Because that's what it's about.
Right.
Yeah. But we don't achieve those objectives typically in organizations at all, by no means of all.
How can we? We'll talk a little bit more about that in just a moment. I'm here with Hetal Doshi talking about the butterfly effect. Stay tuned. Race Again, BFM 89.9.
Because friends matter. BFM 89.9, the business station.
This is Race Again. Good morning, Freda Liu here. I'm here with Hetal Doshi, talking about the butterfly effect. And of course, she's been doing a lot of work with organizations as an organizational psychologist, right?
Yeah.
Which is quite unique in that sense. And we're talking about how when organizations do a transformation, it's not so easy. Some are able to do it a lot. And for individuals and organizations, some are able to get out of it faster. Some take a long time. Did you ever find out why those that can sort of get on and move on? What were they like? Why were they more resilient?
I have yet to see that.
Okay.
I have yet to see that.
Okay.
Because the one who is driving it is also in pain. Majority of the time, they're going through pain. But what helps, so what strengthens it, is definitely one of the clients that we're working with. The leader is just so empathetic about the need to look at it from a psychological perspective and willing to let outcomes take a little bit of a backstep and focusing really from the journey perspective. So setting up the cocoon from a really, really journey perspective, we will take one step at a time. Every step that we take, if it is the right step, it will definitely take us there. So not annoying everybody with tight timelines and outcomes, but really saying, how do we build ourselves by speaking the truth and walking the truth? And through focusing on the journey, they actually experience much more significant outcomes than they ever did before. So it's very, very counterintuitive to be able to behave that way under stress. Right. So under stress, you just want to just get this job done. But the counterintuitive ones who are willing to say that this is hard, if we are all willing to take the right step forward together regularly enough, we will definitely be able to make it out alive even better than we imagined.
Right. I'm just wondering, do people look into, when they join organizations, do they really expect that, maybe if it's a certain, I'm just wondering whether the statistics are different for millennials and whether the statistics are different for the older people. Like, gone are days like my father's time, you work with one company, you stay with that company. So I really come from that perspective that, I might not be here forever, but I like to stay with our company as long as possible. But I also realize it's not a marriage. It is a partnership.
Yeah.
But it's not a marriage, as in I expect you to be loyal to me in that sense, right?
Yeah.
And understand there are market conditions, there are things that change in the landscape, and that I, as an individual, should be prepared, should anything happen, to take care of myself.
Absolutely.
Right? And that is, and I understand when companies give their motivational talk, their rah-rah and commitment, and I am committed to you in that present moment. But if the partnership doesn't work anymore, it works both ways.
Yeah.
Right? Is that why people feel that they've been betrayed if an organization goes through a change?
You speak about two things which are very, very important over here. The types of generations that experience this intensity of transformation and what they perceive out of it. So there are two things over here. The older generation are a lot more patient with it. The younger ones have barely got any patience for it.
Okay.
But the common experience is neither care for it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. One is just less vocal. But deep down, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. I have no clue. You have tried to do this many times. It probably hasn't worked. But it's okay. I'm here. I try lah.
Right.
I tahan. I try. But the younger ones, they kind of catch the same experience of, I don't know what you're talking about. I don't understand it. You keep doing all these kind of things. And I will walk out when I can.
Right.
Yeah. So what enough research has said is that as human beings, we kind of experience things very similarly, but the behaviors that are conditioned to us and accepted are completely different.
Okay.
So older generation, like, people like my parents or whatever, they're not going to walk up because that's not desirable in their generation, their culture, their group of category. Over here, if it's a younger one, people like myself or maybe younger, well, I'm not that young, but definitely, a generation before mine. If they're not happy with things, they almost celebrate it if they leave.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like their friends will be like, yeah, like, you know what? You should stand up for your rights, So they kind of celebrate it for that. The experience is the same though.
Right.
That this is not a good experience. I don't like it. What works then? So what you're talking about is a very important phenomena called self-interest. This is not marriage.
Right.
I need to look after myself. And by default, as a human being, we are designed by our amygdala, which is the strongest part of our body, which is our brain, to say that this scenario is scary and threatening, and I need to survive. So the idea of self-interest emerges for everybody, including the CEO, who is there for the organization, but also there for himself or herself.
Right.
So the only way forward is to co-create, meaning this has to be about us. Figuring out a way, because I myself am not 100% sure of how this is going to work out. And neither are you, and maybe you're not interested as well, but would you like to? Right. So it is almost like an invitation to the party, and the party needs to look like it is really something worth joining for everybody. And we don't take it as that. We take it as, most of the time, Freda, unfortunately, you probably have experienced the same thing as well. Organizations will say, we need to change. How exciting is that? How exciting is tomorrow? Right. I need to change. I need to change as a person. So demoralizing. It almost feels like you have to reject every part of yourself that you think or thought was good.
Right.
And to say that wasn't good enough, which kind of isn't. But really, the idea is like, what is the dream over here? Not we need to change. Yeah.
So I guess there's a increase in transformational efforts globally because of what's happening around the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not going to stop.
Yeah.
That's absolutely not going to stop. Politically, I think it is one of the most, for lack of a better word, exciting times where people are just put in a huge level of chaos. And with chaos, obviously, comes crisis, and then crisis comes transformation. Then you've got changes, obviously, in technology, where 10 years ago, people didn't even really have smartphones. Today, there is research to suggest that it was a study conducted in a university where graduates were willing to give up their food for the day to keep their phones with them. So where there wasn't an existence of technology, now you're willing to give up the primal need of food, that sacred need for food, Freda, I give up food for my phone and Wi-Fi.
So Maslow's hierarchy of needs, he missed that, right? I've seen that one.
Haven't you? Yeah.
Yeah, where they, instead of food, they just put the internet connection.
It is, because it is a form of addiction. It's almost like drugs and stuff like that. But what I'm trying to say here is that because obviously of political changes, technological changes, you've got change in global humanistic trends. So what
Post-industrial revolution.
Absolutely. Everything. Right. It is not only here to stay, it is rising at a faster rate than ever imagined. And more than that, even if it's not really growing as fast as we think, like some things we talk about 10 years, 5 years later is still not really happening. Even if it's not changing as fast as we think, there is this whole fear-based notion that what if?
Right.
So for me, I think the reason why it is here is because of a lot of things, but at the background, it's fear that is a big driving force of, right, I need to. And it's not stopping.
And I think it's a good time to reflect, especially with those people who have worked for at least 10 years, just to see what's happened the last 10 years.
Absolutely.
Right? And then just you may not see like last year, but if you just look at what's happened the last 10 years, how your job has been impacted, how your roles have impacted, what skills you have to change, to be relevant and all that, it's going to move even faster in the next decade, right?
Absolutely.
So, okay, what do you do with organizations?
So, when it comes to war, right, to win a war, you would have all the top guys in military using psychological tactics as a form of winning. So even if our resources are not the best, but psychologically, how are we going to win the war? When it comes to athletes, it's the same thing as well. Technically, they would be sound as they can be. But it is the psychological tactics that ultimately gets them to outperform themselves and others. So this idea of psychological tactics or psychological movement in order to win is not there in organizations. But that's where the war is really all over the world. So what happens is organizations make a decision, okay, I want to transform. But the problem is when they decide on the transformation, they have a lot of negative experiences in the cocoon and they don't end up becoming butterflies. 87% of the time, according to McKinsey, transformation efforts not only fail, they could be below expectations, and sometimes they cost you significantly more. And I've experienced the same thing where organizations invest in millions to put in a technological system, and eventually they take the system, shove it out, and they just let people just do whatever it is that they're doing just so that business can keep going. So this is what organizations have been doing. They've been doing it from a business strategy. Sometimes they call it human strategy, but there's no human strategy. They just expect. So what we do is that the moment that, and we're very lucky, 10 years ago, there was no understanding that this could be implemented in organizations. But what we're doing these days with a lot of our clients as organizational psychologists and people who design psychologically, we are partnering with them before they make these announcements.
Right.
To make all the predictions of where there will be blockages and hiccups and unnecessary cocooning, as we say. And then we will begin the design process with them. And we will make sure that every part of it is co-created. And there's regular check-ins to make sure that it is strengthened from an organizational perspective, which is outside of the individual or the department. Organization is strong. The leaders are resilient. Freda, you will not imagine the number of leaders who take on 3 to 4 roles these days as opposed to one. And they have 3 to 4 major KPIs. And they have, I met someone the other day who's got like a weird heartbeat. A heartbeat that doctors have never, like her doctors are like, we don't understand why you're
still alive.
Yeah, how is your heart beating in that format? And, sleepless nights and so on and so forth. So really making leaders resilient as well, because it's a very scary process for them too. And trust me, majority of them have no clue what the CEO is talking about as well. Right. Because it hasn't been quite co-created.
It's very interesting, right? You were saying that ideally they should work with you or work with organizational psychologists before they make the announcement, because a bit of damage has been done already. Say, everybody's confused. After they make the announcement and say, quick, we need somebody now, right?
It's a total waste of time. Almost a year to 2 years of just cleaning up the mess. Don't say anything. Better you don't say anything. Do all your prep work before that so that you are set up in the best space to make it quick and easy. And then team resilience and then individual resilience as well.
So you're going to be with us for this year anyway. We'll be covering a topic each month. But the general theme of what we'll be going through this year?
The general theme would be how an organization is going through all kinds of pains these days, and how do you make sure that you're psychologically resilient to be able to take that on with clarity, number one, number two, with the least amount of suffering, and number three, you get what you want at the end of the day and more.
Right.
Not the other way around.
And I think also one of the things that's very big, right? At the end of the day, it's about mental health, right? And of course, work plays a big role in our mental health. And hopefully when, over the year, we'll be able to cover some of these topics that will address how we can reduce mental health, mental stress.
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
Thanks for being with us, and look forward to speaking to you again next month. I've been speaking to Hetal Doshi. You've been listening to Race Again, BFM 89.9.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To find more great interviews, go to bfm.my or find us on iTunes. BFM 89.9, the business station.